TelecomTV, where ICT connects.
Hello, you're watching TelecomTV. My name is Martin Warwick and we're here at the SDN and OpenFlow World Congress in Bad Homburg, which is outside Frankfurt in Germany. And I'm talking with Martin Taylor, who is the CTO of Metaswitch. Martin, welcome. Let's begin at the beginning. I've been hearing about something called Project Clearwater. Why is it getting such attention and what is it?
Well, Project Clearwater is an open source initiative that we sponsored and launched in May. What's getting so much attention for it is, first of all, it is open source, and with network operators concerned about the costs of building out their IMS networks, an open source solution clearly has a lot of appeal. But the other thing that's very appealing about Clearwater is it was designed from the ground up to run in cloud environments. So unlike most of the other initiatives to deliver virtualized network functions, which typically are initiatives to port software that's running on conventional network appliances and put them in the cloud, that approach typically doesn't really exploit the full capabilities that the cloud has to offer. And with Clearwater, what we did was we approached the creation of an IMS core with cloud as the native environment. And when you do that, you set about the design of the software and the way you architect the system in a very different way. So what we've been able to achieve is something that really delivers the kinds of benefits that were always identified for NFV, making really good use of the cloud, incredible fault tolerance, extraordinary scalability, the ability to scale elastically and dynamically on demand. Those are hard things to do if you architect your software in a traditional telco appliance way, but designing for the cloud means that you can realize those kinds of benefits.
So you came at it from a novel perspective and direction.
Absolutely, yeah. So we have a long history of building software for telcos. So we're steeped in the traditional ways of doing things, and we chose to break the mold here completely. And we spent a lot of time studying how web-scale applications were built, how Facebook and Twitter and Netflix and Amazon, how they built their massively scalable apps. And we took inspiration from that, and we embodied a lot of those kinds of design patterns in the way that we created Clearwater.
So you're iconoclastic about it. Did you find it particularly difficult to do it, given that you'd always worked in a different way before?
Not difficult in the sense that from a sort of software skills point of view, we didn't find that hard. We weren't sure it was even possible, actually. We're talking about applying techniques that were current in web-style applications, but applying those to SIP-based call processing.
Indeed.
Which historically people have always viewed as something very stateful that requires a sort of very telco-style approach to the task. And what we were able to do was to prove quite quickly that actually you could take these ideas, these web-scale application ideas, and the essential architectural methodology here is that you process requests in a stateless engine, and any state you need to handle that request. And in IMS, we're talking about things like subscriber profile information. We're talking about registration state. That is all obtained by the processing engine from a back-end store, which is separate from it, and it's scalable and fault tolerant. That's a very common design pattern on the internet, not at all common in the telco space. As I say, we were able to make that work for SIP and demonstrate that, yes, it was a design pattern you could apply quite quickly, and then it was full steam ahead, if you like, to mold this thing into something that telcos could deploy on their networks, and essentially implementing the IMS specifications for how other things connect to it.
So Martin, how then should carriers approach NFV, apart from perhaps very carefully?
Well, I think there are sort of two possible ways of approaching NFV. One is to perhaps take a traditional telco approach, which is to say we have to specify absolutely everything about it and define the entire system and see our way to automating every possible aspect of building networks and services in a cloud environment. And I think the problem with that is, as we all know, that approach takes many, many years. And our view is that telcos don't have the luxury of many years to get it right. That they need to adopt again the same kind of approach as the internet application world has adopted, which is that you do things incrementally. You get stuff out there in a small way, you try it out, you see what works, what doesn't, and that applies not just to applications, but it applies also to just the way you create infrastructure. So there are, in our view, some low-hanging fruit in the NFV world, and we think IMS is a very good candidate for this, where without too much in the way of an NFV orchestration environment, you can build an IMS core in the cloud, you can start bringing subscribers up on it, and you can then learn where the gaps are in terms of management and analytics and feedback and those kinds of things which are part of this management orchestration environment. That's probably, the management orchestration environment is probably the biggest gating factor to realizing the promise of NFV. But our view is don't get wrapped around the axle around getting everything right in that area. Start working in the space and see what works and see what gaps you really need to fill in practice.
The implication, though, Martin, must be that the culture of a telco may well need to change to be able to do this, because, they always have been fairly hidebound in the way they approach changes to the network.
That's certainly true, and clearly the operations staff may well feel that they need to push back on this, that they're just not really comfortable. But actually what we're seeing is a real willingness to change. Now, this kind of cultural change is never going to be easy, but the telcos we're talking to about Clearwater really do seem to understand that they've got to bring kind of IT sensibilities to this. They've got to be more open, they've got to embrace concepts like DevOps. I'm not sure they necessarily really understand what that means yet, but there is some open-mindedness there, which we're really quite encouraged by.
That's good to hear. We know there are going to be some significant savings, CapEx, OpEx as well to some extent. But what do you think is the ultimate game changer for carriers as far as SDN and NFV is concerned?
Well, it's very much a two-sided discussion, this. On the one hand, clearly there's a desire to reduce costs.
Yeah.
And there's no question that running on commodity hardware, commodity infrastructure, with the ability to pick and choose best-of-breed software virtualized network functions will help to get costs down. But there's also a desire to become more flexible, more agile, to be able to innovate in the service space more quickly. And again, the ability to pick and choose software functions to deploy on a common platform does give telcos that much greater agility than they've ever had with their monolithic building blocks that they've always had to use in the past.
Okay, last question to you. Is everything going to be virtualized?
There are certain things that cannot be virtualized. Clearly, if we're talking about optical transport, then that's clearly going to require physical hardware. And maybe at the core of the network, where you're shifting terabits, then again there's a good argument for using specialized silicon. But our view is that really anything that you want to do above layer 2, anything that could be deployed in the network with gigabit Ethernet interfaces can and should be virtualized. The x86 architecture continues to deliver more and more bang for the buck. It's an excellent basis for a flexible network platform, and by dropping in pieces of software that deliver the function that you need, you can very, very rapidly construct the services that people want. And we've been impressed by just how much performance you can achieve through the data plane of just a standard x86 server. And we're also, of course, seeing some silicon technologies start to find their way into those servers, either in the form of NICs that incorporate switching, or in silicon that's actually on the motherboard. So we're going to see more and more development there. This is not a static field by any means.
Well, we've seen an enormous amount of change since the first NFV white paper was published this time last year, also at an earlier SDN and OpenFlow World Congress. So things are moving very, very quickly.
Well, extraordinary amount of change in 1 year. I mean, the impact of that white paper, it cannot be overstated. It absolutely has turned the industry upside down. And that's why events like this are incredibly well attended by all the sort of movers and shakers in the industry are here. I mean,
they are. There's a real buzz to the place, I must admit.
Yeah.
And there's another NFV white paper coming out today, this very day.
Indeed there is, absolutely, yes.
Might do the same again.
And another meeting of the NFV group in California in 2 weeks' time.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Martin Taylor.
Thank you.
TelecomTV, where ICT connects.